Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Ablow.
And I'm Catherine Munoz.
Well, this is an important show because for folks who know us or know some of the things we've done, we created this supplement called 4 Great Sleep. It's the website the number 4greatsleep.com, but that's not what we're talking about. Even though it applies here, what we're talking about is a new study that's come out of Sweden that I think it's incredibly important, because what it shows is that 3 nights, just 3 nights of impaired sleep can impact your well-being in ways that I frankly wouldn't have predicted. And what I mean by that is your cardiac well-being. It can affect your heart. And so very surprising finding. And these researchers in Sweden, they took 16 people. They actually measured the levels of inflammatory molecules in the bloodstream. If you get bad sleep, then you're literally going to increase those molecules.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things in this study is that they used younger people. So these were young, healthy adults who, we would expect to be not having as many sleep issues and most resilient. And so for people that are older, we might expect to see even bigger changes in the proteins that cause things like atherosclerosis, high heart rate, or even high blood pressure.
That's exactly right. So listen, people sometimes wear it as a badge of courage or a badge of honor when they say, oh, I stayed up. And in this study, it didn't take much. It was literally reducing sleep from 8.5 hours to 4.25 hours. And doing that for 3 nights makes these inflammatory molecules in your bloodstream skyrocket. Now, why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because these inflammatory molecules can lead to heart arrhythmias. They can lead to other heart problems. After all, think about it. The blood's coursing through your heart, the pump for your body. And if your blood has much higher levels of inflammatory molecules, you have a very sensitive electrical conduction system in your heart, and that can make a big difference in terms of your heart health. And it's no badge of honor to stay up and get 4.25 hours of sleep. And some people do all-nighters if they're studying, if they think, well, I got to work, and I got to do this for 3 nights. Well, it's dangerous, it turns out.
Or if your boss assigns you a project the day before it's due and you're up all night trying to finish it, that's not good. But, some people maybe have criticized this study because they think it's, not real world because they only studied 16 patients. But there's a lot of data out there besides this data, which really kind of gives more evidence because it's at the protein level. So at the metabolic level, when they actually looked at the changes in these proteins that cause inflammation. And the other thing about this study that makes it very well done is that each person used themselves as their own control. So they had 3 nights of what was normal sleep. And then they had 3 nights where they sleep restricted them to only, like you said, 4.5 hours or so. So it's really a great study design.
Exactly right. And the amazing thing is that, people have a sense like, well, I'm not quite myself, or I don't feel as energized. And that's the soft science of
Yeah.
sleeplessness and insomnia. But it's more than that, because in fact, if your blood chemistry is changing based on poor sleep, you know that. So that makes like sleeping a fitness activity. And it makes me prouder even to have created this 4 Great Sleep, the number 4greatsleep.com supplement, because it's incredibly important to get to sleep. And the researchers looked at not just the inflammatory markers in your bloodstream, but they also looked at things like glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity. And it turns out your cells can't use glucose, sugar, the way they're supposed to if you're sleep deprived enough. And it doesn't take much.
I mean, how many times have we all not had the full 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep that we need? So it doesn't take much to change it. The other thing that's, I think, interesting about this study is that they also had them perform exercise. And when they were sleep deprived, their exercise wasn't as efficient as it was when they weren't sleep deprived. And so they still showed a higher level of these biomarkers, these proteins, that cause the bad things and not the good proteins that support our brain. And so if you're working out and you haven't had good sleep, that exercise isn't as beneficial as it would be if you had the full night of sleep.
Absolutely. All right. So if you like take a look at this and you think about it, you'd say, listen, number one, if you've got heart issues, if you've had atrial fibrillation, if you've had a heart attack, God forbid, I hope that's not the case, but there are a lot of people afflicted with those things. You've got to work on your sleep. You've got to get enough sleep. Again, this was a change from just 8.5 hours to 4.25 hours for just 3 nights. So certainly if you're vulnerable, all of us are vulnerable sort of to heart issues, but also if you are type 2 diabetic, if you're pre-diabetic, if you're diabetic, the fact that insulin sensitivity is reduced, what does that mean? Translate the medical jargon, which means this: insulin sensitivity is important because when you eat and you bring in some sugar, your cells want that sugar. They want to burn it for energy. In order for them to do that, your pancreas releases insulin, and sugar can then come into the cell, get into the cell, and be used by the system within the cell to create energy, burn that fuel. If you have insulin resistance, you can't get enough sugar in. That's the key that unlocks the cell door to let the sugar in. So what happens? Your pancreas tries to do better. It releases more insulin. And that is the setting in which you risk becoming pre-diabetic if you're not, or type 2 diabetic if you aren't yet, or worse yet, an insulin-dependent diabetic. And so it's incredibly important for people with prediabetes, diabetes, et cetera, to get enough sleep. And look, I know there are medicines for that. Everybody's reaching for a prescription pad within 3 minutes of having a patient come in the door. But there are naturally occurring substances that work very well to help with sleep, many of which I'm proud to say we included in For Great Sleep at forgreatsleep.com. The number, not the word, at forgreatsleep.com. Things like ashwagandha, because it lets your mind relax. It's an adaptogen. Things like magnesium and hops, a really curated collection of ingredients, which, I relied on you for to a large extent because you're, as a nutritional biochemist, I'm not going to freelance here or solo.
No, we're a great team, but one of the other components in For Great Sleep is melatonin. And when melatonin is the hormone that actually helps to regulate our sleep. But as we grow older, melatonin levels decrease. As a matter of fact, I think it's, from the time we're a child to the time we're adult, it can decrease by as much as 80+%. And so having the natural melatonin go away, we may need something to boost those levels as we age to help us sleep better. But I want to ask you a question. So during deep sleep, our heart rate and our blood pressure naturally go down, correct? So that gives our cardiovascular system a chance to get some rest and recover.
And if you're shortchanging that system, then you're shortchanging your heart. And it turns out you're also driving your pancreas potentially harder, which can result in a longer term problem. And you're also, by the way, causing your mind trouble. Again, this is just a 3-night study reducing from 8.5 hours to 4.25, 4 hours and 15 minutes for 3 nights. But imagine the folks who have chronic insomnia or who decide, listen, I don't want to sleep 8 hours. I'm going to set my alarm so I get up every time, with just 5 hours of sleep. I think I'm a hero. It's actually, given why do people exercise? Well, for one thing, they want to optimize things like blood sugar. They want to reduce inflammation. It turns out you can do that in your sleep. Who knew? I didn't know that. This study, and I hope they'll do more studies to look into this and back it up because it's so important. The other thing is that I want to bring up one thing that is in the realm of psychiatry, and that is that very often when people are working hard, and they are these days, like folks are really working increased hours and sometimes several jobs, et cetera. In any case, there are people who feel like I owe it to myself to stay up later and enjoy some time. So they might work until X time in the evening, and then they feel like, well, I'm not going to just go to sleep. Like, that's like, I just worked and slept. Like, what's that? So
Yeah.
they stay up, and what do? They get on the computer, which is blue light flooding you, or they're watching TV, more blue light. Blue light keeps you awake. So does, by the way, the themes that are coming to you, the stories that are going to engage your mind. But if you're going to then stay awake because you have stimulated your brain so much with light and ideas, etc., you're going to set yourself up for not having as good sleep. So you decide, I'm going to stay up later because I'm not just yielding and going to bed. No work and then bed for me. Okay, but now you might not be able to sleep even when you decided to. And so that's tremendously important. I think people should not be looking for on their days by saying, well, I owe it to myself. I'm going to watch 3 episodes of this Netflix show, and that's the way I enjoy myself, because really you got to get your sleep.
Yes. But what are some other things? I mean, we have 4 Great Sleep, which obviously has melatonin and ashwagandha and hops, as you mentioned. It has other things in it that work together to help bring us to a state of rest where our mind is calming down and we're beginning to understand that our brain says, okay, it's time to go to sleep. But what are some other things that people can do to help fall asleep besides, not watching TV or doom scrolling?
Well, I should mention, by the way, that the ingredients include things like magnesium and amino acids, L-tryptophan. So it's a really curated collection, and I don't care. Get a sleep supplement that works. We like ours for great sleep, but get whatever works. Just make sure you sleep, and if you can sleep without that, that's great. Good for you. Just don't keep yourself up. Now, what can you do to ensure more rest at night? One thing I'm a big fan of is writing things down. It's a unique psychological reality that when we note things, when we go to bed, so you may go to bed and you're like, okay, I got to remember that tomorrow I have to do this, this, and this in the morning. Believe it or not, that narrative stays with you, and it can impair your sleep. It can keep you from the dreams you deserve because you've got things on your mind. We're narrative creatures, human beings. Strangely, perhaps, if you write down those things and say, all right, I'm just going to make a list of what I have to do in the morning, and put it right there, over there at the other side of my room, or, on the table from when I walk down the stairs. The amazing thing is that can often allow you to relax. You've written it down, you're going to remember, you don't have to worry. That's one of the hints.
Yeah, I agree. I think, one of the other things, and people like Huberman Lab and other kind of really famous people who have studied and done sleep research for their entire lives have said this: make sure you get enough sun in the morning, and make sure, like 10 to 15 minutes at a minimum when you first wake up, if possible, or during the day, get as much sunlight as possible, which also helps your vitamin D levels. But then in the evening, try and get outside for a little bit when the sun's going down, because that helps reset the hormone melatonin to help you fall asleep. The other thing, we talked a little bit about the amino acids for great sleep, but it also has GABA. And from a prescription point of view, there's something called gabapentin, which people use to help nerves, and it helps pain. It does a lot of different things. But one of the things that it does is it helps to reduce that stress level and relax you. And so, you know, getting out in the sun, writing things down, GABA supplements, which GABA is included in ours as well. All those things combine together to help people get the sleep that they need.
Which we have called actually the nocturnal worry release system. So
Yes.
all these ingredients in 4 Great Sleep, we came up with the term. You're not going to find it in a medical dictionary because it won't be there. And by the way, you should always talk to your doctor about things like insomnia, and you should talk to your doctor before you start a supplement and all that. So disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. But nonetheless, the nocturnal worry release system, we came up with that term because a lot of what keeps people up is worrying. And so you want a supplement, if you're going to take one, that doesn't just snow you. You don't want to be snowed. You want to be relaxed. You want your mind to not have as much stress. So you don't want things that simply make you tired. You want things that make your mind go into a different sort of state. a state where you feel reassured, where you feel as though you don't have to worry, hence the nocturnal worry release system. I like that NWRS we came up with. And another thing that I'll mention, by the way, is this. Like, I drink coffee all the time. You got to be careful, right? Because, that's an easy intervention. When people come to me and they're like, I'm not sleeping, I'm like, let's talk coffee. When's your last cup of coffee? Right? Because that can affect things too. So I think we're getting a bigger picture of it. The headline here is that the study from Sweden tells us there's every reason to believe, and they need to do more studies and confirm it, but there's a lot of data out there, tells us, listen, there are actual physiological ramifications to short stretches, 3 nights. Okay, this isn't being in law school or running your own business and you're staying up weeks at a time or months being sleep deprived. This is 3 nights. Headline: physiologically, it can be big trouble, literally molecularly. That's one take home lesson. The other shocking thing is that it affects not only potentially your heart, but your endocrine system. Your pancreas could lead to prediabetes. Additionally, in the realm of psychology, but also in the realm of biochemistry, et cetera, is the fact that you can't the next day have the same level of balance, emotional balance. So you can make bad choices. People tend to overeat. They tend to have relationships that might descend into, debates or acrimony, another SET word. This is a problem of mine. I come up with these words. But in any case, you got to be very careful. Think of this as a fitness-related activity, a mind-body fitness-related activity, getting enough sleep.
And one of our missions is to help people with their brain and their mind, as well as their body, because the things that we recommend are things that help the overall physical health as well.
And the other, something that occurs to me is not everyone's sleeping alone. Lots of married couples out there, lots of people who are sharing their rooms, et cetera. If someone's sleeping, but the TV's on, or someone's reading 4 hours longer, that can impact the other person's sleep. Yeah. And that's important to note. And so, again, you got to figure out, look, could sleep apnea be involved? There are things that can impair your sleep, but very often the thing impairing your sleep is you, and your habits. And that has to be addressed. And then you have to know, because I think it's tremendously important, that there are ways to address this naturally. I'm not saying every prescription is the devil. However, if you can use all natural ingredients sourced in the United States like ours, put together in FDA licensed or regulated facilities, to me, that's a win. It's from nature. It's meant to restore you.
And, to your point, we're definitely not anti-prescription. People need them for certain things. But there is something to be said for, let's evaluate whether or not you really need that prescription. Is there something else you can do, whether it be increasing your physical activity, turning off the TV early, not doom scrolling, small changes like that. Big changes like stopping caffeine, which is really hard to do. I was able to do it. It was painful. It was very painful to get off of it, but I had to. I actually had to go on a prescription medication for sleep one time. It was horrible. I was doing things that you shouldn't do in your sleep, like sleepwalking. And then it was really hard to get off of it. I was able to finally get off of it. And now I take, natural supplements like For Great Sleep to help me relax and calm the mind before I go to bed. And I implement some of the things, not all of them, that you addressed here as well. So, there's a bunch of things that people can do, whether it be supplements, whether it be changing their routines, getting off caffeine, going for a walk before bed, like a short one. It doesn't have to be a 40-minute walk. It can be a 10 to 15-minute walk. Taking a hot bath actually helps to calm people down. So little things like that people can do to help get them to sleep would be awesome.
And I'm going to put in my big plug is for mindset and deciding it's not heroic, it's not smart, and it's shortchanging yourself to shortchange your sleep. It bolsters everything that we've believed about sleep being essential, but it goes further because it tells us physiologically you put yourself at risk for more than one illness. We kind of knew that, but this lends evidence for that. And it's a good reason that we're proud of For Great Sleep, the number 4, greatsleep.com. and about feelamazingdaily.com, because this is just one topic out of many that we're addressing in the holistic realm at feelamazingdaily.com, same name as the show. And these recordings actually will be available on feelamazingdaily.com. So that's nice that you can listen again or have friends listen. Maybe you have somebody in your life who isn't sleeping enough. And remember that our curated ingredients in 4greatsleep.com, the number 4greatsleep.com, are meant to work together. And for that reason, you can rely on it to be helping your mind and your body relax enough to get to sleep.
So, shall we call it a wrap and talk about our next episode?
We can call it a wrap, and people can tune in and hear about our next episode for sure when it airs. It's about a report that's come out that is not encouraging about the health of young people in America, and we've got to get into that next. Great talking to you again.
Well, great seeing you.